we go live.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I know you got a lot.
Several of my relatives. Okay, we're live. Senate Appropriations, March 18th. We're going through the fiscal year 26 budget request. And right now we're going to talk about the Department of Public Service, otherwise known as DPS. The other DPS. But did I say public service?
You did. Yes.
I was going to talk about how they're both DPS, but I meant to do it purposely, not accidentally. So we're talking about public safety. We already talked about public service. And they're the PSD now. DPS had the guns, so they went out on who gets DPS. So I don't know if the secretary can talk or who's going to lead the presentation.
Rick Hallenbeck, the Director of Finance and Administration.
But there's some sound.
You can sit down.
All right, Rick, can you let me know when you're up and ready to roll?
Is that working better? No.
There was still some feedback.
You can hear her through all the lines.
Yep.
She's probably an economic development.
I can hear the folks in the room just fine, Rick. Are you
Is
sure
there-
you're?
there- I think the feedback's good now.
Is that better?
Sounds good.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Senator. Rick Hallenbeck, Director of Finance and Administration. The Commissioner is going to lead things off, and I will pick up when we get to financial information.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
Good morning. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. My name is Jennifer Morrison. I'm the Commissioner of Public Safety, and I'm joined by Deputy Commissioner Dan Batesy and all of our divisional directors, who I will introduce as we give a quick wave top look at what is DPS before I turn things back over to Rick to talk about the dollar signs. I acknowledge that this is an extremely experienced committee, and probably you already know all of the components of DPS based on your longevity, but we are going to run quickly through our shape and what it is we do and why we need your support for our budget. So Rick, if you could advance the slide, that would be great. This is a copy of our organizational chart. At the top, you can see that there's the commissioner and the deputy commissioner and a few positions that support the office of the commissioner, such as an executive assistant, a principal assistant, legal counsel, policy director, etc. And then you'll see that there are on this slide, you will see that there are 6 divisions plus a brand new division of animal welfare. We'll talk about why there's actually 8 divisions. So the largest division is, in fact, the Vermont State Police. If you can go ahead, Rick. And that is led by Colonel Matthew Birmingham, who is the director of that division. And the state police is divided primarily into 3 divisions, which is field force or the uniformed troopers. And then the criminal division, which has multiple components, as well as the support services division. That is our largest division, and it is potentially the most visible face of DPS as they are out and about in their marked units and in uniform. Can you go ahead, please? VCIC is a unit, a division of the Department of Public Safety that typically under a budgetary construct is squished together with the radio technology shop as the Criminal Justice Services Division. They don't relate to one another at all, other than back in the day, they were part of a division that included IT before ADS was born and a variety of other things. So this is what I said, that you'll see one too few divisions when you look at our org chart, but it's a budgetary construct. So VCIC is led by Director Jeff Wallen, who's been in this role for quite some time, and they are responsible for the sex offender registry, criminal history checks, making sure that records are accurate and that the right information gets to the right people, as well as fingerprint-supported background checks and auditing and training of our local partners. You can go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, it seems like your slides are different than ours.
Yeah, actually, Deputy Commissioner Batesy is controlling the slide.
Oh, okay. But those are different ones. We're no, at least in order, but we can find them. We have radio technology services next.
Okay, I am still showing VCIC. If Dan can advance the slides, please.
Oh, I see. It appears that we're both sharing. Perhaps I will.
Yeah, you're both sharing.
I'm gonna.
I got you. I just switched over to Dan's. Okay. Under Radio Technology Services, which is led by Director Corey Chase, we maintain a statewide land mobile radio network that supports the work of the Vermont State Police, our other law enforcement partners at the state level, as well as the Agency of Transportation. And we also provide assets and communication assets for many other non-state of Vermont users. The RTS also is responsible for the telephony that comes into our two PSAPs, which are public safety answering points and also dispatching centers. So we are the only portion of state government that operates its own telephone system. And that is also part of Corey's shop. If you can go to the next slide, Dan, please. We skipped EM, but we'll go to Mike DeRocher here in fire safety. Red, see what we did there for fire safety, put it in red. Executive Director Mike DeRocher, again, a super seasoned veteran. All of these directors have been around for quite a bit of time. And Mike's shop is broken down into multiple sections, including licensing of the trades, building codes and permitting, the hazmat team, operation of the Vermont Fire Academy in Pittsford, the urban search and rescue team, the fire investigation unit, and also a public education section. And in Vermont Emergency Management, which is a small but mighty shop under the direction of Eric Forand, there are also 5 sections, many of which you don't know about until a disaster strikes, like flooding. But we have the engagement section, operations and logistics, planning section, recovery, and mitigation. There's a lot of the behind the scenes prep work between building plans, exercising plans, engaging with partners to be ready for when something happens. And mostly what people see is what happens when the State Emergency Operations Center is activated in response to an event that overwhelms local resources, either in one area of the state or the entire state. Go ahead.
Can I ask, Mike, how long have you been with fire safety?
About 35 years.
I was gonna say it's gotta be at least 25 years, so that's when I started. I think I dealt with you on a plumbing code issue like 25 years ago.
Mike is definitely long tenured. We have one of the longest, if not the longest tenured colonel in the country, in Matt Birmingham. He is going into his 12th year as a colonel of the Vermont State Police. And Dr. Tricia Conti, who is the director of the Vermont Forensic Laboratory, also long tenured, Director Hallenbeck. So very experienced team here at DPS. We are home to the only forensic laboratory in the state. And the lab is broken down into sections also. One is chemistry, biology is another one, toxicology, physical comparison unit, which looks at everything from fingerprints to tool marks, firearm impressions, casings, rifling, etc. And then they also have folks who maintain their accredited status and conduct quality control audits, and also are concerned with the chain of custody on anything that is submitted by our partners around the state as evidence in a criminal matter. Go ahead. And last but not least, well, not last, because we still have the animal welfare to tell you about. Director Rick Hallenbeck, who is there and will walk you through the numbers. He and his team do an incredible amount of work. They manage 31 grant programs from many different federal funding streams. For instance, in state fiscal year 24, they dispersed $114 million And they have a very quick turnaround for our communities that are relying on getting access to those federal funds in a timely manner. So his office is broken down into accounting, budgeting, grant management, procurement, auditing and payroll, and then the federal grants program. And last but not least, the Division of Animal Welfare was given to us by the Vermont legislature last year, and with enough funding for a director, with a mission to build a plan in the first 8 months from the director's start date to develop a comprehensive response statewide to animal welfare concerns. This is a very heavy lift with a lot of interest. There is an incredible advocacy community in Vermont for this. We are pleased to announce that we have hired Lisa Mylott, who is currently serving as a distinguished chair of an endowed chair at the University of Georgia Law School, where she specializes in animal welfare as well as other areas of the law. And she will be relocating as soon as her semester wraps up and moving to Vermont. So sometime in May, we'll get an actual start date, and we'll get about building that plan. So that's the overview of DPS. And I'm going to turn things over to Rick to walk you through the budget.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner.
So with your permission, I'll move to the next slide. And I think I'm going to refer to the ones on the screen because they appear to be slightly updated from the ones that were in my slide deck.
Yeah.
So there were some things that the memo from both chairs of the Appropriations Committee requested that we cover, and the rest of the slides are those items mostly. Our base initiatives, we have a new position proposed in the emergency management to work in the hazard mitigation grant program. The position is mostly federally funded, 95,000 federal funds, roughly 5,000 in general funds to cover the cost of that position. And then the second base item also is related to one of the one-times, as well as some federal money. The state police radio replacement cycle for 500,000. That's a base appropriation so that it will enable us to have a replacement cycle for radios, because right now we find ourselves in a situation where all of them need to be replaced. They're all a safety issue, and they need to be replaced as soon as practicable. And that also fits in with, I think the total cost is roughly $4.5 million. Correct me, Commissioner, if I have that wrong. We have some federal money coming from congressionally directed spending grant, and we have the $920,000 proposed in a one-time general fund. And so between those three funding sources, we'll be able to shore up the radios and have a replacement cycle so we don't find ourselves in this situation again where we need to hurry up and replace.
What will be the cycle? Like every how many years would you replace the radio?
Colonel, do you have that information?
If you were asking me, Rick, I can't hear you. There was a lot of background just now.
Yeah, I couldn't hear you either.
I think that the question was the replacement cycle for radios. So in a perfect world, we would be rotating out radios before they get to the degradation point where they are. And that, depending on how technology emerges, would be replacing every 1 to 2 years, approximately a quarter of the radios, so that we're on an 8-year replacement cycle, 8 to 10 years max.
Okay. So you'd have that $4 to $5 million with this 500,000 replacement.
Yeah, I believe our federal amount is about $2.5 million, so we're pretty close to the amount we need.
Okay.
And the last item, $600,000 in matching funds for the cybersecurity grant program. Was there, in case there's any questions before we move to the next slide?
No.
Okay, sir, next slide. Some new language. This is, I'm sure you noticed within the budget proposal, the transportation funds go away in state police and general funds backfills that need. This is some language, some similar language was in the transportation fund statutes for this $2.1 million for state police vehicles. It's been a carve out for some time that this 2.1 million is exclusively allocated for outfitting those vehicles. And so we're just, since the transportation funds are going away, we're just taking that language and putting it in general funds so the fleet remains, that portion of the fleet.
Because that 2.1 was part of the transfer, the JTOC transfer, the 20 million, right?
Correct.
It was just line item to make sure that the vehicles were also on a replacement cycle, so you didn't get into the same situation of having vehicles that were unsafe or something.
They got behind a few years ago.
So yeah, so I remember Matt was talking about.
Yep.
Next slide, sir.
We're famous for that.
Well, we're fixing it.
Some position changes to note. The state police has converted 11 sworn law enforcement officer positions to civilian positions. We do tout the animal welfare position because that position is created and hired, but it's not included in the budget proposal because the position number was not in there, or actually no, it wasn't position, it was the fund. The fund wasn't in the budget system at the time we needed to budget that position, so we were unable to include it.
Senator Starr's last present to us.
Yes, yeah, that was. So what do you mean these 11 state police positions changed to civilian language?
So they were put into civilian roles, roles that we can accomplish without a sworn law enforcement officer.
Was it like new positions, or you just decided
No,
those need to be sworn officers?
So we've identified numerous positions as our inability to hire qualified personnel in sworn roles has persisted. We have identified roles that do not require a badge and a gun to successfully complete the job. For instance, we civilianized a cold case investigator position. So this is previously a detective working on cold cases with full powers of arrest. We have determined that we can use a civilian investigator to do all of the work. And then when it comes time to arrest someone or apply for court processes, a detective helps them out. Likewise, the director of our two PSAPs, our communications director, our emergency communications director position, used to be a captain in the Vermont State Police. And we've determined that we can use a non-sworn person to effectively carry out that mission. So we have identified 11 such positions in the last 2 years to continue to do the work that is mission critical in light of our and everyone across the country's continued sworn staffing troubles.
Thank you, that's helpful. Senator Norris?
Yeah, Commissioner, in your 11 state police positions that were converted, was there any savings there?
Well, one would assume that there are savings because they're in a different retirement system. So that's sort of a hidden savings. And some, the pay scales are different. So the compensation for a civilian director, for instance, of the PSAPs is considerably lower than what a state police captain earns based on their union, their contract, and the fact that commanders' compensation is driven off of the union contract. So yes, there were savings in both salaries and down the road benefits as well.
So are you planning on applying those savings to this animal welfare position funding, or?
No, nobody gave us the savings back. I mean, but this money comes from, it was appropriated, I believe it's $1 on every, Rick, do I have this right? $1 on every some quantity of dog food. Or dog license, sorry, dog license.
Yes, there was a surcharge for every dog license. I can't remember the amount, but dollar sounds like the right range.
Yeah, I think we went over that actually.
And I will get into the vacancy savings when we get to the state police budget crosswalk.
Senator Watson, you have a question?
Yeah, so, well, just about the animal welfare position. So when, so this funding for this position is not in the budget, in the governor's recommended budget, but obviously, I mean, you've hired somebody, this is part of your ask, I assume.
Yeah, the reason I bring it up is I just wanted to make sure to be transparent that those special funds that should be in this budget aren't. They could be placed in there, and I can't remember if I had yes, I do have the budget need, roughly 140,000 would be the amount in that special fund.
And that is, we're not yet collecting this like extra dollar on dog licenses that I assume would go to pay for.
I believe it
that.
is being collected.
It is being collected, okay.
Yes.
Okay, so there is money theoretically there that could be used for that.
There will be.
Okay,
I don't have an estimate on how much, but there will be money there. If it's not added in, it's not the end of the world. We can do an excess receipt based on the available revenue.
thanks.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, it wasn't expected to generate all the money, the dollar. But just to help.
Next slide, please, sir. So federal funding reductions is another thing that was requested in the memo. We have a couple of those. The first one, the Emergency Management Performance Grant. This is a grant that funds most of the salaries and benefits in the Emergency Management Division. This award amount has been sort of stagnant for several years, and then we received a cut in fiscal '24. Current information says that we'll probably receive all that amount, also the 24 level in 25. So we wanted to highlight that. There are some things I'll get to in the budget crosswalk that show where state funds is picking up some of this reduction. Next slide, sir. The other grant that we're experiencing a shortfall is the Homeland Security grant. That has been, as you can see, between 5.1, 5.6 million, and last year's was 4.3, so significant reduction. This you won't see other general fund ups to cover this because this isn't base spending the way emergency management is, where the grant, we rely on that for their salaries and for some operating. The pinch here is felt at the local level when equipment is needed for local fire departments, local law enforcement agencies. That just makes a smaller pot of grants to go around. Okay. Next slide, sir. Okay. The Flood Resilient Community Funds, this is our update on that. All the funding is obligated and all the projects are underway.
And is that the one
That's our ARPA funding, sir.
but that's not the municipal flood resilience, there's a different fund.
Not the CRDM,
No,
no.
okay.
This is the pre-existing non-statute program.
And this,
CRDM.
and would this go away when all this funding is obligated and?
We're
is this a
hoping to hold
continue?
it as a shell.
Okay.
There's more flexibility in this one than some of the other ones, so keeping all of our options open, but it currently has no funding in, but we don't plan to shut it down, just in case.
Okay.
Next slide, sir. Some carry forward funding. In state police, we had a balance of 247,000 in general funds. That's funding for our drug task force. We carry that forward every year based on big bill language that says we'll spend 405,000 on the drug task force and 190,000 for local officers. You'll see in our budget proposal that we are asking for an up in this area because in past years the drug task force wasn't fully filled. There were positions that were vacant. Now there's a lot of participation on the drug task force, and the amount that has been appropriated is a pretty ancient amount. It's been in the big bill at 405,000 for several years. So it's time to modernize that to what the salaries are costing today. So you'll see $156,000 increase, and I'll show you that when we get to the crosswalk.
Okay.
Next two are the hiring incentives and loan repayment, and the high flood risk of 7.4 million.
Is the regionalization of dispatch been all figured out? Is that continuing to be?
I'll let Commissioner Morrison speak to that. Commissioner, did you hear that question?
I didn't, you guys have so much background in that room. It's coming, I'm having trouble hearing you, but go right ahead and ask the question.
How is the regionalization of dispatch coming along is the question.
Oh, you really want to just put a knife right in my heart, don't you?
Well, I didn't know, you have the money, but I assume you still have other work to be done on that. I guess you don't have to give me the sort of details, but.
No, I'll say this. It's been almost 2 years of work. Late June, the task force began its work. It has been a tremendous volume and cadence of work. Our consultants have released about 3 weeks ago, released a draft report designed for public feedback. We're taking feedback through the month of March on this draft report. It proposes many options of potential paths forward. And we're eager to hear feedback from folks like you and the general public and the first responder community to finalize a report with recommendations, and then it will be incumbent upon the task force to endorse or prioritize those recommendations and start to sketch out a path forward. And then we'll have to do that in conjunction with GovOps and Appropriations and probably the new committee on information and energy. So a lot of work left to do, but a tremendous amount of progress has been made.
But do you think the facility, like this $4.5 million will be spent in FY26, or are you just setting it aside for when it gets to that point?
In FY26, I would find it hard to believe that the 4.5 million, are you talking about the 4.5 million specific for pilot projects?
Well, it just says facility and then for implementation of the regionalization of dispatch. So it does not.
Yeah, that's not it's not clarified yet. In FY24, there was an $11 million appropriation for the work of this, for the work outlined in Act 78, which was the big bill. And that is what established the task force. There was $2 million made available for the ongoing work of the task force to engage with consultants. The first $1 million was sort of freed up. The second $1 million we had to discuss with the Joint Fiscal Committee about dipping into that. Then there was 4.5 million carved out for pilot projects, and the other 4.5 million was in reserve for whatever is next. And we don't know where that would be prioritized. But I can tell you, the further we get down this path, $11 million doesn't sound like much in the scope of what the need is. So we'll have a lot of discussions to be had once the work of the task force advances just a bit further. I'd encourage everyone to take a look at the report, please.
Okay.
Next slide, sir. Okay, yeah, we just went through the regional dispatch, so next slide, Dan. Okay, so this is gets to the end. Single audit findings. We did have one, has to do with reporting the Federal Fund Accounting and Transparency Act. That requires that we report all sub-recipient awards at fsrs.gov. Actually, that just changed to sam.gov last week. So our reporting, we had a finding that we weren't reporting every award, and we changed our procedures to ensure that we were capturing awards that are new and amended. That was where we were sort of doing stuff. It will be a repeat finding this year. Hopefully we'll have that squared away for the next audit in fiscal 26.
Okay.
And that should be all the slides. You can just scroll through to make sure. I believe that was it.
Yeah.
And so I would, if everybody has a copy of the big budget book that we put out on page 13 is where our ups and downs / crosswalk form starts. Or I could find the document and share it if folks don't have that handy. Yes,
we have it.
Page 13 is where it starts.
Yeah, maybe page 12. No, this is.
On
And
the,
it's slide 14.
Yeah,
slide 14, yeah, if you look at the page number on the bottom right,
yeah, 13, the page number is 13 of 166.
perfect.
I hope you're gonna go through all one.
So, this budget document here has almost 300 lines, so I'm gonna hit the
Yeah,
very
please.
high points for you, and then if
You
Senator
don't wanna
Norris,
keep Senator Chittenden waiting.
yeah, if Senator Norris would like to follow up with me, I'll be happy to go through every single one of them. But, so for brevity's sake, if you go about midway down the page to account number 507-550, the 760,000 or 720,000 is the, that's the crosswind moving from the VCIC appropriation that should look familiar to what is in budget adjustment. Is a slightly different number, but that's what that is. If you go down 4 lines, you'll see a fee for space reduction of 100,000. That is because fire safety now occupies that space at headquarters. Administration is mostly remote at this point. If you skip a line, the next 3 of them, or actually the next 2 after that, the 238,000 down and 230,000 up, those are both insurances. Actually, all 3 of those are insurances that sort of net out. It just has to do with the way the account code we choose when we pay that invoice. There's really no change there, no increase to be concerned with. The next one is 296,000 in account 516660. That is our ADS service level agreement fee. Roughly 110,000 is due to the need for a new technology and information unit storage solution, technology investigation unit storage solution, and the rest of it are just general cost increases of the same people and software packages. Moving
We
to
see a lot of that. Yeah, Senator Brown?
I missed that. I'm looking, 516660, you said?
Yeah, ADS Enterprise app,
it's directly below the insurances.
296,505. Right above Vision ISD.
No, I don't. On page 13 of 166?
Right hand corner of the page.
6660. Oh, that's all right. I'll catch up. I don't see it here online for some reason.
Okay, well,
It should be the very first page of the crosswalk.
Okay, I got it. Yep.
Flipping a page to 14. At the very top
13.
of this page, you'll see where current service level, current law shows you, sorry for the terminology, I know that's weird, but that shows you the 29,000 up, or sorry, 29 million up in GF and 20.25 million down in transportation funds that I talked about earlier when we were looking at the slides. And so that's why, if you look at our salaries and wages line, the 12.7 million seems high, but it's really an 11.1 million down in the transportation fund offsets it. And that happens generally throughout the rest of the salaries and benefits. The only other thing significant in that area is 175,000 in overtime. That is being added because DPS will stop billing Fish and Wildlife for dispatch services. They are the last paying customer for that service. And then if you skip down about a third of the way through the page, 504599 other employee benefits. There's a $2.35 million line item. That is for a statewide law enforcement officer reclass that is occurring now. That number was derived by the administration, so I can't speak to how it was put together, but that's
right, we've heard about it.
4 lines down from that, you'll see account 507-550 for 501,000. This is just shifting from other line items to the line item we're paying it from. It's our body worn and dash cameras, but it's not a new budget item that was previously budgeted. 2 line items down, there's 507-600, 130,000. That's actually also a shift from other line items that funds our cameras in the barracks. There's cameras in both interview rooms and in the evidence rooms, cameras and storage. And that's all I have for page 14. If there's no questions, we can skip to page 15. And a little past halfway, account code 520590. There's a $521,000 up. 400,000 is for the state police duty firearm replacement, and the rest of it is a true up from other line items.
Is that also on a replacement cycle like the radios, or just when needed?
Yes, I believe that's 5-year replacement cycle on the duty weapon, Colonel.
Yes, it is on it. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, the firearms are on a 5-year replacement cycle as recommended by the manufacturer.
Great. So is it like do you do it like the other cycles where you use the base appropriation that you're putting money in that?
Yeah, so what we've really been trying to do over the last 10 years is get everything into a replacement cycle, technology, equipment, vehicles, and we've been fairly successful in that, that everything now is just being replaced on a cycle because we need all of that every year.
Great. Sounds smart.
Quick question.
Senator
Yeah, Colonel Birmingham, how you doing?
Good, how are you, sir?
Good. I met with the commissioner in Richmond, whatever else, and I was told that the firearms are no longer on a buyback program. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah,
So how
they
are
are
you
not.
those firearms then?
I think we're still figuring that out, but the company 6 Hour is not purchasing them back from us. So we are trying to figure out what we are going to do with them, and I don't have an answer for you right now.
Okay, thank you, Colonel.
I would skip to almost the bottom of the page, the third from the bottom. That's where the 500,000 is for our radio replacement. And then the next two line items have to do with the $2.1 million shift from T funds to G funds. Also, there's some other downs in our safety supplies and equipment line item. That's why it shows 155,000 down when we added money to it. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of moving parts in this. But the very last line item, one thing I note for the vehicles is that is an overall up of 200,000 to stay on our replacement cycle for vehicles.
Okay.
If there's no questions, I can move this to page 16, and at the top of page 16, the very first line item you come to, other grants, that is the 156,000 I mentioned to shore up the drug task force to ensure we can fund the local participation.
Okay.
Moving on to criminal justice services. Very center of the page, it's line item 507,550. You'll see the down of 720,000 for the crosswinds moving to administration. And that's the only thing significant I had for criminal justice services. So move on to page 17. So in the salary and benefits, there's a shift here from federal to general for the deputy director and the director of emergency management. These are two of the things that were chosen to come out of the emergency management performance grant that was cut in federal fiscal 24. Also, there's another 200,000 in overall salary and benefits from line 506-200 other personal services. That's because the two positions that were added last year in general funds later in the session were put into this line item. So now they're in the correct account codes.
Okay.
Two line items down from that, 507-600. You'll see 150,000 there. Those are that's funding for contracts that we have to pay for disasters when we don't receive a declaration. Some examples are if swiftwater teams come in, or if we have regional planning commissions come in to bolster the workforce. And the very next line item after that, 155,000, 150,000 is for a school safety center position and 5,000 for the hazard mitigation grant manager position that I mentioned earlier. Any questions? So I'll move to page 18. And the last line item in the emergency management appropriation, 550510, that is another thing that came out of the emergency management grant and into general funds that pays for our river gauges. I believe there's two or three other partners around the city that contribute to that. Moving to the fire safety appropriations, there's only two things of note here that we have shored up our vacancy savings by the way 81,000, and then our fee for space, we took 100 out of administration, but we're adding in 88,131. This fee for space is down overall, so the up wasn't quite as high as fire safety.
Okay, makes sense.
And finally, that brings us to the forensic lab, where you can skip page 19 because there's nothing there of significance. But on page 20, the third line item in, we are also shoring up the vacancy savings in the forensic lab. That is everything. There are a lot of moving parts, so I can offer Senator Norris, if you'd like to go through these. Happy to.
Yeah, we're relying on Senator Norris.
No pressure.
No pressure. Any other questions for our friends of the Department of Public Safety? Corey likes working for DPS so much he left DPS to go work, left PSD to work for DPS.
I'm still trip over that.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you, Commissioner Morrison and everybody, and appreciate the time.
Well, we appreciate your time as well. On behalf of the more than 600 men and women of DPS, and in addition to our 200 part-time employees, we are super appreciative of the support that you show us. And if you have any questions at all, you can start with Rick and then make your way to me or Deputy Commissioner Batesy. We stand ready to assist with any details you need.
Well, we appreciate that, and we'll definitely be in touch.
Okay, thanks so much. Thanks, team, for being here. Good job, directors.
And Mike, are you going for 50 years? What are you doing?
Maybe 60.
We heard it
So much fun.
in transportation last year. We heard there was an employee that had reached 50 years of service. Yeah. Okay, who's doing your presentation? You, Senator Shindon?
Let's go on here. Yeah, sit in the chair.
Yeah, please do.
Mr. Chair. All right.
S-117.
Correct.
What is it?
It is a committee bill addressing Department of Labor administrative and technical miscellaneous changes. I believe sections 18 and 20, after speaking with Secretary Bloomer, or why it's before you all here. Would you like to just to address some of that background? Okay.
Yeah.
So section 18, this was brought to us from the administration of Commissioner because the U.S. Department of Labor has identified an issue in how the annual tax rate schedule for unemployment insurance employers is calculated. Our current language uses the highest amount of benefits paid out, but this is not the best indicator of the health of the UI trust fund. So it's necessary that the language should reflect the benefit to cost ratio as the metric to determine appropriate tax rates. The U.S. Department of Labor is asking the Vermont Department of Labor to adjust this calculation. And that's what this would do. And that we did not have a fiscal note when we passed it out of committee last week during the flurry of crossovers. So I would expect Sophie, as well as other from JFO, maybe to elaborate on what the implications of that ratio adjustment would be for employers. It should be, in my understanding of this, it shouldn't be of a great deal, but it certainly can have an impact.
Okay. And then, since this is a committee bill, as introduced, is the version you're bringing to the correct, or there's not an amendment?
The other one, oh, sorry.
Right, there's no amendment.
No amendment.
As introduced, okay.
The other one would be section 20, based on my conversation with Secretary Bloomer. This has to do with the short-term compensation program. The STC program is something that we had, and this would actually reinstate it. It helped up until 2020, helped employers avoid layoffs by providing unemployment insurance benefits to workers whose hours are reduced. We put it on hold in 2020 due to outdated systems. The program was put in a dormant state, and the department just could not implement the program with the legacy systems we had. This is being designed into the new system that I'm very excited that the Department of Labor is on track to implement. And the department is proposing to bring this back and offer it as an option for employers in order to allow them to not have to lay employees off. They can access some UI benefits if hours just are reduced. So this is from the administration asking to reinstate a program, which would mean that this dormant state could start to see some flow of cash out of it.
Yeah, I think the Commissioner, Department of Labor mentioned this.
And I told my chair I'd be back by 3:10. Would you mind if I left you in the good hands of Sophie, who knows everything about this?
No, I think that's fine, yeah, sorry to make you wait. Yeah.
Sure.
Unless the chair of the committee has anything to say.
No, this partner, thank you, Tom. This is our Alvin Clarkson, Chair of Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs. This is like the technical corrections we get next door in government operations. This is a technical correction that aligns our Department of Labor on the whole. I would say it aligns us more fully with the feds and makes a bunch of little small technical corrections. There are no real major, there are no policy implications really in this bill. And the one thing we did add that the Department of Labor didn't come to us with was we eliminated the sub-minimum wage for disabled workers, which the commissioner was able to put into play, but never has in the history of it. And he, along with our committee, suggested we eliminate that.
Okay. So.
And Sophie is the brains behind this operation.
Well, it's good to see you and hearing this role.
Thank you.
Is there any other thing that the Appropriations Committee, Senator Chittenden kind of quickly ran through there, but your understanding of what the fiscal impacts or what the impacts to the revenues of the state are?
Yeah, so Sophie Zidani for the Office of Legislative Counsel. So obviously I'm not from the Joint Fiscal Office, so I don't have any input on that.
And is there a fiscal note that we know?
No, we never asked for one, and it was never suggested by JFO that we needed one.
Yeah, so my understanding on Section 18 is it's really just a clarification that the language comes from the federal statute, and other states and the federal government have interpreted that calculation one way, and Vermont has done it a different way. And so this is just to align Vermont's interpretation the same as everyone else's. And my understanding from the Department of Labor is it will actually enable the Department of Labor to have better access to federal data, that it will now be aligned because the calculations will be the same.
So the money coming in will change, and so that's probably why it changed.
So my understanding is the way it currently has been calculated is it looks at the total amount of money that goes out in a year, the amount of benefits paid, but it does not take into account money that's coming into the fund. And the way the calculation is revised, it will now take into account sort of the total amount, taking into account both the in and the out. So, for example, if there's a change in the rate, you know, the state could be receiving more money into the fund, and that isn't captured right now in the way that it's calculated.
But that explains why it came to the committee, but.
And the short-term compensation program, again, is not a program that's been heavily used in Vermont. Vermont has a program where they use disregarded earnings. So if somebody is on unemployment but is working part-time, they're able to disregard up to 50% of their earnings, and that generally works better for the individual employee. They receive more in benefits, but the program, the short-term compensation program, is a federal program, and my understanding is the department is being encouraged by the feds to reinstate the program, and as an added tool in their toolbox. And now that the unemployment compensation system is being modernized, they now will be able to do that. They just were struggling to do it before. It was very manual and
they're all
expensive.
computers. Okay, I don't think we have any questions. We appreciate your time. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, we have a motion to move the bill that is seen as favorably by the chair. Very strong paper vote. So if there's not any discussion, the clerk will call the roll.
Finley.
Senator Norris.
Yes.
Senator Watson.
Yes.
Senator Baruth. Senator Lyons.
Yes.
Senator Westman.
Yep.
Senator Brennan, yes. Senator Birchlight.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Really good job.
Who's part of the
Well, I
budget?
keep on, I call you Chancellor.
Sorry. That's just.
Who wants to take this on? Maybe we should make Phil do it.
Is this?
Your call.
Who has labor?
Who has labor?
Who's
Good
POS?
question.
I actually have labor.
Ah.
I'd have to do a lot of homework on this baby. Well,
You
I
just
could,
say,
Well,
there's
usually
no.
I could read what Tom
person
just read, I don't know.
No, you just say there's no.
Senator Chittenden will do all the
Appropriation.
descriptions of the bill. You just say that we voted 5-0
Yeah.
in favor and then any impact would be de minimis.
Yeah. Okay,
You want to do
Went
it?
over,
Why
he
not?
said two
Okay.
sections.
Let me write that down.
I do have that.
Is that de minimis or de minimis?
That's the second time you got me this year.
We
And
got
we've
no
taken the
choice.
money out of the bill.
Should I,
There's no money in this bill.
hold it up for
Mine.
Phil?
Oh, your bill, yeah, we took the money in.
No, probably not.
What's the question?
It's gonna move, huh? Well, you wanna move this along, do you wanna just not hold it up for Phil and move it out?
I don't think it matters. Yes, we do have two bills.
I don't think he'll
I
care.
don't think you'll care
Okay,
on this one.
Just tell him to report it.
I'll save this for Amy.
Tell him if he,
Okay, so we
if he
can,
wants